Happy holidays! Hey guys, it's Sebastian from AskSebby, and today we are going to talk about some of the people that you might run into either over drinks or at the dinner table and their views on credit cards. I'll talk about all of these types and how I kind of react to them, but reminder that this is going to be more of a fun video, so don't take it too seriously if you are someone who falls into one of these groups. As always, feel free to give this a thumbs up, doesn't cost you anything, and it's a pretty nice Christmas gift. If you want to see more stuff like this, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. I'm going to start off with people who I know in my family group first because I think that's a bit more relatable, and then we'll dive into some of the more extreme options. So group number one is the group that thinks you are traveling for free all the time, and they think that you can get the whole family, the whole extended family on a trip. Hey, I saw you flying business class, why aren't you flying all of us? And this is a pretty funny one because a lot of people fall into this group in my family. They want to do this, they see the value, but they also don't want to put in the work. The ones that do want a step-by-step guide, which kind of works out because I have a YouTube channel, but for the most part, they just see it as too much work, which is fine, especially for my aunts and uncles who have younger kids who they're taking care of, and they have other things that are to be prioritized in their life. Let me know down below in the comments if you have anyone else in your life who's like that as well, who expects free trips. I do want to say that I would do that for my parents, but not my sister, just because I feel like with your parents, you kind of have that relationship that you want to kind of pay back for them keeping you alive while you were a kid. But for your sister, for your cousins, for your aunts and uncles, I can give them the tools and they can kind of learn and do what pretty much all of us do. My sister gets it and actually does a bit of this, but more on the economy side and some interesting hotel options. My brother thinks that it's not worth his time, and that's fine. And then over on Mandy's side, her parents get it and kind of do some of this stuff as well, which is kind of funny. And then her sister doesn't get it at all.
Her sister's an asshole.
Say that again?
No, I can't say it.
And per Mandy's words, her sister is an asshole, which is someone who we're going to talk about for number two. So this is the group of people who keep asking you the same questions and never really act on it. I don't mind answering questions. This is kind of the point of the channel, but when you ask me year over year whether you should get the Chase Sapphire Reserve, and I kind of give you a calculator, I run through all the numbers, and then 6 months later, a year later, you come back with that same question, that's an asshole to me. If we put it into a different context, because I think some people get angry when I call people assholes, imagine if you had a friend who is thinking about breaking up with his girlfriend or his boyfriend, whatever, his significant other, because that other person is crazy, and you're telling them, hey, this person's not good for you, they actually don't add value to your life, they make you miserable, and then 6 months later, a year later, they come back, they're like, I'm thinking about it still. They don't want to take that step even though you've discussed it with them and you've given them that recommendation. Number three is going to be a bit more specific into Mandy's family, which is going to be her dad, who likes to brag about us, which is kind of weird. So what he ends up doing, and just because we went to Macau, I think about a year ago, he ended up bragging to a lot of the other people, like, hey, this guy Sebastian's a VIP, we got upgraded, we got free breakfast. Did you get free breakfast? No, you loser.
No, he asked the other table if they got free breakfast as well. It was really embarrassing.
So he pretty much started just randomly asking people whether they got free breakfast, and yeah, it was a funny time. And the thing is, I'm not a big gambler. It was mostly because we had Hilton Diamond status and we were staying at the Conrad over there. But I think the thing is, he hasn't really experienced that upgrade potential with status, especially in Asia, because I don't know why. I feel like in Asia, you tend to get more upgrades and they actually treat you well. In the US, even if you have the top tier status, oftentimes they don't seem to care at all. If you're someone that travels to Asia, definitely have status. Number four is going to be Mandy's grandmother, who thinks she's a travel agent just because we travel pretty often, probably once every 1 to 3 months, depending on what trips we want to take. Oftentimes this is going to be based off deals, or products we want to try, or hotels we want to try, or locations we want to try. So pretty broad. So a lot of people come into it saying they want to go to a specific place. For us, it's pretty open-ended, and it's the best opportunity that is available. So those are all of the relatively lighthearted ones. Moving on to number 5 though, is going to be people who think you're in debt. And this tends to be more friends of friends. And when they see that I'm taking these trips, they see business class, they see all these other things, they're like, wow, this guy must be in a lot of debt, just because they associate credit cards with debts. Santorini, Maldives, Bora Bora, you look at all of these places and you think, hey, these people either must be rich and they don't look rich, or they must be in a lot of debts. One thing I really like about San Francisco is that there's not too much signaling compared to a place like LA or New York where you have to dress up. I'll put up a funny cartoon, but it's the idea that there's a lot of people out there who might look very scrubby, who are probably very successful. For this group, I try to explain what we're doing and explain the point process. Some people end up getting it, some people end up dismissing it, and it is a bit complicated, even for people who might be smart in other industries such as law. And then for other people, they think you're doing something criminal, and that's going to be the next group. I've definitely run into my fair share of people who think that applying for cards and then using the points and then intentionally not paying interest is illegal. This goes back to the idea that they associate credit cards with debt and the fact that you're supposed to pay interest when in reality, you're not really supposed to. Or at least it's not really financially savvy, it's not really pragmatic, it doesn't really make sense. I do get it though, just because there might be some people who are doing illicit things, applying for credit cards in other people's names and stealing credit cards. That is a pretty big problem, but for our purpose, for what we're doing, that's not really going to be the case. I mentioned this in a prior story a while ago about how we went to a timeshare talk mostly to get a free show and to get some vouchers and stuff for Vegas, knowing that we weren't really going to buy anything. And then when they started talking about how you could redeem those points that they give you, I talked about how, well, you can do the same thing for credit cards. And then they pretty much went out and said, no, that's illegal. Don't listen to this guy. He is basically a scoundrel. At the same time, afterwards, she ended up talking about why her mother would have been happier if she bought a timeshare just because they could have spent more time together, and how that was one of her biggest regrets. If you're still watching, give this a thumbs up, and let's dive into a few more other types of people that you might run into. Cards that don't exist. So I run into this a lot over on Instagram as well as Facebook, and honestly, I'm not really sure how to act or how to react, because it's pretty easy to come off like a jerk. So I've had people tell me that, oh, they have the Capital One Reserve card or the Chase Sapphire reserved. And I kind of get what they're saying sometimes, but it's also a bit confusing. Probably a bad example, but it's like if I went to a car person and I told them that I was buying the Honda F-150. You kind of get what they're saying, or you think you do, but it's still a bit confusing. A bit of this also ties into the next group, which is the one that doesn't seem to have much critical thinking ability. So they end up getting cards that they like, which is fine, but then complaining that there's not that much value there. The luxury black card is a prime example of this, just because it's not really that competitive. You might get it as a status symbol, but it doesn't really add that much value. If you focus purely on the marketing, then you're like, oh, these points are worth more than your points, but in reality, they're really not, because you can't transfer them, and everything else you expect me to say here, explaining all the details, which I won't get into just because a lot of you already know, but it's not a competitive card. Same thing with something like the Apple Card. There are going to be people who might actually benefit from that card, and at least that one doesn't have an annual fee, but I still feel like it's not really as competitive as you might want it to be. The luxury black, titanium, gold, or whatever other flavors they have, I wouldn't really consider. Apple Card, okay, fine. Starbucks card, okay, fine, maybe, but only in those specific circumstances. Another one is the group that thinks you're destroying your credit score, and you can easily solve that by showing them your credit score and assuming that it's actually in a good spot. It's probably going to be higher than theirs. Obviously, there are going to be some people who might have similar scores without having as many cards, but at the same time, you're getting a ton of value on top of that. So you're not getting all of these cards just to increase your score. You're getting them because you're getting a higher return on spend for spend that you're already doing, and probably taking some pretty interesting trips that they would have to spend a lot more money on. The final one, and wrapping all of this up, which ties into the beginning one as well as the one we just talked about, is going to be the group that thinks that this is a bit too much effort. And this is going to be definitely a lot of people that I know, and I think it's fine. I think you have to decide what makes sense for you and where you want to spend your time. If you're someone who has kids, if you're someone trying to build a company, then it might not make sense to do this. But if you're someone who gets home at 5 or 6 p.m. and you're sitting in front of the TV anyways, then this isn't too much extra efforts. You could probably spend 5 minutes once a week reading about this, and instead of watching basketball or something and checking the scores, you can actually get real tangible value. The reason I like this hobby unlike a lot of other ones, is that other hobbies tend to focus on doing a lot of research and then afterwards buying that end game solution that you really like and that fits your needs. So maybe spending a lot of time researching and then eventually buying that pair of headphones that fits what you're looking for, that you feel like adds value. But with this hobby, with stuff like this, you actually get value back. You're not just spending money. Even if you don't care about any of the trips, you can still get extra cash back, which is still more money in your pockets. I definitely think for some cashback people, it might make sense to find the system that works for you and then set it and forget it. There's not really much additional value on top by watching a video every day, which I kind of hate to say, but for people looking to do travel stuff, there is value because things change a lot, the valuations happen, and you just see a lot more options in terms of using your points. And also, in case you're wondering, that's why I end up focusing on travel a bit more, just because it gives you more outsized value in terms of these interesting experiences, which I think a lot of people who are near my age group and younger and older as well want to try before they die. And then also, I think because there's just so many more changing dynamics that there's a lot more complexity that needs to be covered. Also, YOLO trips and once in a lifetime trips are just more fun to cover. Wrapping up the video, my question for you guys is, how do you act towards these different groups? Which ones do you have in your life? And is there any that I missed? Pretty fun video, but I'm pretty sure the community, as well as myself, would love to read through the comments because it's always fun. Give this a thumbs up, share this with anyone that might be interested, and more importantly, enjoy the holidays and have a good one. See you guys next time.